Good morning and welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Morning Show. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you joining us this morning if you're watching us live. Thanks for that. If you are checking us out later on the pre-recorded video or the audio, appreciate that as well. Jumping into your traffic this morning, you're looking at heavy delays. Excuse me. Looking at heavy delays on I-12 westbound from O'Neill Lane backed up to Jubin Road. Going to have to deal with some tough traffic this morning. Sorry about that. You're looking at delays on 64 heading into Central, as well as delays on Greenville Springs if you take a left off of Highway 64, so you got to be ready for that as well. Looking at minor delays at 4H Club Road, River Road, and 190. Of course, you're looking at delays in and around the larger high schools as they as kids get dropped off, and those folks start entering the traffic patterns today. 65 degrees is your current temperature. 80 degrees is your high. 64 degrees going to be your overnight low. Looking at pretty sunshiny this afternoon. It's going to be partly cloudy this morning. Looking at overnight showers. So tonight, Thursday night, heading into Friday, you're going to be looking at some intermittent rain during the evening. So please keep that in mind. Yesterday, Governor John Bel Edwards declared the coronavirus a public health emergency. Going to be looking into what that actually entails. A lot of it just like creating or calling for a public emergency during a disaster. It opens up the pipeline to more federal assistance, more supplies coming into the state as the count of coronavirus affected continues to grow. It is important to remember that this is a novel virus. It's not something that we've seen. A lot of people like to compare it to the seasonal flu, which you really can't do. We've been dealing with seasonal influenza for years, decades, centuries. We've been dealing with things like cancer and obesity for the same amount of time. The rapidity with which this is spreading is what's so alarming. Yesterday, the NBA found out that one player had it and have canceled they have not canceled. They have suspended indefinitely the rest of the season. Now, that's a multi-billion-dollar industry that is just basically, still had about 8 weeks left of the regular season before the playoffs even started, maybe closer to 6. And they canceled it. So it's important to remember that with the speed in which this is spreading and the fact that there's no vaccine, currently no immunizations built up on it, everybody's susceptible to it. Of course, it doesn't affect younger folks as bad as it does older folks, but you'd be surprised how many older folks are in your life. Of course, it's got roughly a 10 to 13%, depending on where you're looking, fatality rate in those above 78 years old. Of course, that drops off a little bit when you drop back down to 65 and then on down from there. But it is important to remember that it is spreading rapidly. You can spread it rapidly. Please remember, wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Let's try to remember not to go out into a lot of large public areas over the next few weeks. You don't have to panic. No need to panic. But they're just trying, they being public officials, public health officials, doctors, trying to curb the spread of this as quickly as they can before it gets too crazy. Of course, we've seen what's happened in Italy. A lot of hospitals are getting to the point where they're overpacked. That's a secondary issue. So, just because it won't kill you doesn't mean that some other issue may not. Just because you get coronavirus, there may not be enough beds at your local hospital. This isn't because of the pneumonia component of it. This isn't something you just kind of go to urgent care and maybe they give you a steroid shot, you go back to work the next day. No, it's a little different. It declared a public health emergency yesterday here in Louisiana. Spread continues. Again, there are no immunizations built up in the population. There are no vaccines at this point. So, trying to curb things the old-fashioned way. Try to avoid large public places. Wash your hands, bathe, and try to avoid touching your face as much as possible until they get a good handle on what they can do. That would be public health officials, government officials, what they can do to curb this coronavirus spread. Again, it's growing exponentially, and part of the reason for that is that it's what's called a novel virus. I used that phrase earlier. What that means is that we haven't seen, it's a different strain of coronavirus. Most of the time, coronaviruses are things that are tested in labs and dealt with in labs. They haven't really gotten out into the public. This one did, and as you can see, it's spreading rapidly. So please try to take precaution. No need to panic, but you do need to take precaution because you just never know who in one of those majorly affected demographics, which is usually the elderly, might be just one or two touches away from you. So please keep that in mind. Not about panic, but it's about being responsible. Next, yesterday, the East Baton Rouge Parish Council dropped completely from their agenda the item of a tax exemption for development off of Buddy Ellis Road. The lakes at Jubin Crossing. I'm trying to juxtapose a lot of letters this morning. The lakes at Jubin Crossing had applied through a program, and it really has nothing to do with them. This is, I guess you can say, responsible building. Had applied for a program that would allow them to be part of the pilot, which is payment in lieu of taxes. So they would pay CAFA, which is the Capital Area Finance Authority, administrative fee every year, but they would not have to pay local government property taxes. Well, this particular property was worth about $120,000 a year, split among several property tax entities, and it just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense on the books. The power was taken out of local government and given to East Baton Rouge Parish Council by the legislature, by the state legislature. So this saga sort of began a few months ago. The parish council, the school board, as well as the sheriff all came up with resolutions to send to the East Baton Rouge Parish Council that they were not in favor of the development receiving a tax exemption. It wasn't that they weren't in favor of the development, just receiving a tax exemption. Mr. Gary Frog Talbert went to East Baton Rouge Parish Council, presented those resolutions and sort of I guess you can say, the Livingston Parish mindset behind why they didn't want to give a tax exemption. The East Baton Rouge Parish Council tabled it for a month. During that time, Mr. Talbert was looking for what the parish could do legally to try to combat it. But what really kind of sent it home was Representative Buddy Mincy Jr., who we did a podcast with actually roughly a week ago, who one of his pre-filed bills is to remove that law and make it so that tax exemption determinations can be made at the local level. So no more of this things like ITEP and the like being determined somewhere else. That the local governments will have a say in whether or not those things are approved or not. With him filing that bill and with the parish being so against the tax exemption of the development, the EBR Council dropped it completely off their agenda, and it looks like they'll let the legislation take its course. So that saga is, at least for now, over. Unless the parish, unless the developer waits for the legislation to pass and then approaches the parish about discussing a tax exemption. We'll have to wait and see how that goes down. The Walker boys, unfortunately, came up short against Bonnabel, 65-60, to end their season and the 5A semifinals. Bonnabel will go on to the state championship. I believe they'll be facing Alexandria. It's just an unfortunate way to end the season. Of course, Jalen Cook will be moving on to LSU as an LSU signee, a couple of seniors graduating. So Walker will be looking to retool for next year. A couple of softball scores. Doyle outlasted Albany 10-11, and the Lady Jackets had a lead but lost a heartbreaker to East Ascension on the road 10-9. Of course, you can check scores out all the time at www.livingstonparishnews.com/sports. The Big Idaho Potato is coming to, this is really fascinating. It's coming to Oak Point Fresh Market in Watson this Friday, that'd be tomorrow, from 3 to 7 p.m. And it's a giant potato on a trailer. It's a 72-foot trailer, 44,320-pound potato. I'm sorry for laughing. What in the world? And so the Idaho Potato Commission, for their, I believe it's their 100th anniversary, came up with this idea of, can we make or genetically engineer this giant potato, stick it on a trailer and take it around the country to kind of market. It's pretty genius. I mean, it's got me laughing here this morning. But they will be at Oak Point Fresh Market tomorrow. From 3 to 7 p.m., you can come take pictures with the giant potato. But there's also going to be potato-type snacks. There's going to be rides. There's going to be games. They'll have giveaways and things like that. So it's kind of it's not a whole fair, but they do have some things going on with the potato. So again, that's 3 to 7 p.m. tomorrow, Oak Point Fresh Market. You might have heard of Mallory Brown and her daughter Maddie. Mr. David Gray has written about them before and talked about them. Maddie is deaf and suffers from chronic seizures due to difficulty and a loss of a chromosome. And so recently, Maddie had a seizure. Their dog, Oreo, who was the sort of first alert dog, special use dog who gives Mallory, the mom, sort of the heads up that something's about to happen. Well, they were driving down the street. Oreo nudged Mallory, and she looked back, and Maddie was blue and not breathing. So she pulled over, called 911, trying to get Maddie's attention. EMS showed up, and to Mallory's surprise, the mother, one of them knew sign language and was able to calm Maddie down, get her on the ambulance, get her breathing, get her calmed down, and take her to the hospital. And Miss Mallory was just blown away by one of the EMS being so professional, being so responsive, being so caring for Maddie. Probably saved her life by knowing American Sign Language. Chris Long's, both of his parents were deaf, so he knew sign language. He had to learn it to communicate with his parents. So it's interesting how those kind of things come around. But Mallory Brown said that Chris probably saved her child's life. So again, you just never know when these little skills you pick up might come in handy. So thank you to Chris Long for being able to save a life as an EMS first responder. I know that the people of Livingston Parish, and especially the Browns, appreciate what you did for them that day. Coming back around to your traffic, please remember that there are heavy delays from O'Neill Lane all the way back to Juban Road on I-12 westbound, starting to cause some heavier delays on the surface streets, especially at Juban and 190, as well as 4-H Club Road, River Road, and 190 as well. 64 going into Central, some minor delays, and then some heavier delays once you take a left on Greenville Springs. It's about 7:53. Most kids are dropped off at school now, still looking at some minor delays in and around the major high schools. It's currently 66 degrees. 80 degrees is your high today, so it's going to be a warm one. 64 your overnight low. It's going to be cloudy here in the morning, sunshiny in the afternoon, and then you're looking at some intermittent storms overnight. One last time, my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us this morning for the Livingston Parish News Morning Show. We are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays. We also have a website that we mentioned several times, www.livingstonparishnews.com. We have an app to go with that. Hope you have a great day. Hope you enjoy the sunshine this afternoon, and we will check you tomorrow morning. Oh, Parish Councils tonight. Don't let me forget that. We'll talk more about what's going on at the Parish Council tomorrow morning. Hope you have a great day. See you in the booth tomorrow.